Adab. We are gathered to celebrate a glamorous, high-spirited, loving, vibrant, flamboyant, funny, fun-loving, gifted, talented, elegantly and unusually dressed, exquisitely sensitive, anti-establishment, anti-authority, vocal, feminist, activist, edgy and rebellious artist who somehow always managed to look drop-dead gorgeous. How fortunate for all of us to have known her, to have loved her, to have been loved back by her. We offer our heartfelt sympathies to the extended Ayub family, Mahmoud, the patriarch, along with Alia and Luke and their children, Zara and Rafe, Maryam and Adam and their children, Samir and Lala. We want to thank you for giving us a chance to be together and to offer our heartfelt sympathies, our tributes, and our gratitude for the privilege of knowing the remarkable woman who was Mansoora Hasan. I adored her, I always have, and I always will. With an unmitigated, unabashed enthusiasm and admiration. We shared a love of many things, including exotic foods, qawwalis, corny jokes, serious art, and all things poetic and heroic. And of course, we both worshipped Imam Ali. We met when possible, stayed in touch via phone, email, text, carried on a consistently enjoyable, convivial, exciting, and a laughter-filled relationship. You would blush if I was to repeat some of the wicked jokes we traded. But I want to start this talk by telling a clean one. We would double over laughter with this joke. Let us lighten up the mood of this somber service a little and remind everyone that Mansoora was not one to approve of long faces. She would rather see us making merry, especially on this day devoted to honoring her. It's also a reminder that even as she faced two unspeakable tragedies in succession, starting with the devastating loss of her beloved son, Ali Hassan, and ending up in the throes of a disease so malevolent that it makes the journey of a cancer patient seem like a cakewalk. Mansoora chose to stare down unblinkingly at the smiting arrows of outrageous fortune all the way to the end. She cannot simply be defined by the tragedies of her last few years. She deserves to be celebrated, hailed, and lionized for the extraordinary life she lived, the incredible group of friends she cultivated, and the beautiful family she raised. This joke is so stupid that it can only be classified as corny. But we found it hysterically funny, so here goes. A bus full of 49 ugly men, I mean really, really ugly men, along with one very ugly woman on board, had a head-on collision and everyone died. When they arrived at the pearly gates, God granted them each one wish. He started with the men and saved the woman for the last. So the first man said, "Well, God, I want to be gorgeous." God said, "No problem." He snapped his fingers and it happened. Now you see, one reason Mansoora and I love this joke so much is because both of us firmly believe that in this world there are only three kinds of men: the rich, the handsome, and the great majority. And if you are to ask the great majority what they want to be, they all say handsome. Who says men don't have egos and vanity? Well, so no surprise that the first man said he wants to look gorgeous. Well, he was granted the wish. The second man, he looks at the first one, he goes, wow, God, my wish is also to be gorgeous. So God snaps his fingers and the second one becomes beautiful. And he goes down the list and all 49 of them end up with the same wish and they're all looking gorgeous. So now God turns to the woman. She is on the floor laughing hysterically. God said, well, what is your wish? She can't even answer. She's so full of whatever laughter and merriment she's experiencing. Finally, she brings herself to say, God, my wish is make them all ugly again. Imagine Mansoora as a teenager in a society where the President of Pakistan, Field Marshal Muhammad Ayub Khan, had decided that any education outside of a vocational training was not worthwhile for the citizens of a newly born nation that was still going through its growing pains. Those interested in science had to pick between medicine and engineering, and for the rest it was a choice between law and finance. Girls were essentially encouraged to study home economics and get on with the business of caring for husbands and children. There was no place really for humanities or a liberal arts education in this setting. I followed the stereotype and became a doctor. Not so our Mansoora. Rebel that she was, she became an artist and an actress. Nothing could be more unsettling, more blasphemous, more disquieting for the moral police whose job it was to slap down anyone, anywhere having fun. As a breathtakingly lovely young woman, exactly much more than what Mahmood described, Mansoora launched her acting career in Shoaib Hashmi's Sach Gap, a program using sharp wit and humor to pierce holes into the inflated egos of holier-than-thou, self-righteous politicians. She entered our living rooms through Pakistan television, won our admiration, and walked straight into the heart of one Mahmood Ayub. Once his eyes were fixated on his object of desire, Mahmood refused to rest until the two became one. It reminds me of what Socrates said about marriage. By all means, marry. If you get a good wife, you will be happy. If you get a bad one, you'll become a philosopher. Well, clearly, Mahmood is no Socrates. Instead, he shined as a lifelong world banker, and wow, what a golden couple they made. Heads turned when they entered a room together. Mansoora followed Beyonce's advice from that song, Let Me Upgrade You. Her loving care upgraded Mahmood from just being a man to becoming the fully actualized human we adore with equal admiration. The beautiful children and grandchildren they managed to produce is what gave Mansoora the greatest joy until the end, and how lovingly the family cared for her when she needed them, upending their lives, crossing continents to be with her, a total inspiration for all of us. Mahmood's career led him out of Pakistan into newer pastures where Mansoora continued to polish what she had studied at the National College of Arts, Lahore, and later at Pratt Institute in New York, obtaining an MFA. This is the aspect of her life I wish to explore further now. I've entitled my tribute to Mansoora, a portrait of the artist as a young woman. Obviously, it follows the title of a novel by the Irish author James Joyce, regarded by my late friend and professor of English literature at Yale, Sara Suleri, as the best novel in the English language, a portrait of the artist as a young man. The young protagonist in this novel rejects both a wild life of decadence and leisure, as well as the polar opposite, one dedicated to priesthood, after serially experiencing discontent with each. As he sat lost and confused at a beach, wondering what to do next, a young woman passed by. Her beauty was so overwhelming, so arresting, that it produced an epiphany in our hero, and he decided to spend the rest of his life trying to find an expression for that level of beauty. In Evgeny Onegin, Pushkin calls it the genius of beauty. It is in this background that I ask the question of what moved Mansoora to dedicate her life to the arts, despite growing up in a country that officially discouraged what they wisely called trivial pursuits. What is art? What is an artist? And what is the role of an artist in society? An African sage defined art thus: art shakes the trees and then all the monkeys fall out. Of course, our poets have replaced the monkey part with wise, zahid, naseh, sheikh, mullah, pandit, priest, and well, you get the idea. So to begin with, art is an individual's perception and then expression of that perception and that experience, rather than a group's collective experience. This places power in the hands of the individual, who can now crack open concrete, hardened, cemented dogma. Suddenly, what was certain becomes uncertain. The seminal danger here is that by questioning certainty, art injects ambiguity about subjects considered permanently settled. More importantly, art can become a medium to depict not only what is, but to imagine what could be, what should be. Even more critically, art can propagate these uncertainties, these doubts, by representing the other, the mistreated, the ignored, suppressed segment of society. Art and artists belong to the individual, the antithesis to group seeking globalization. This is, of course, potentially lethal, threatening to topple the world order given by the homogeneous, widespread popular consensus on conservative values. An artist's life is rarely, if ever, financially rewarding, and mostly lands them in trouble if they wish to serve as a voice of the oppressed. Given who our dear Mansoora was, this is precisely what she chose to do and how she chose to live. Dangerously, daringly, as an artist, she attempted to expose what has been swept under the rug by the powerful. Her themes predominantly revolved around the plights of women all around the world. I can cite dozens of her works to demonstrate her unflinching commitment to the cause, but I've chosen one. One that forced me literally to look at life from both sides now. I'm talking about Mansoora's work with Fatma Mernissi, the Moroccan feminist writer and author of one of my favorite books, Scheherazade Goes West. The Hasan Mernissi collaboration culminated in the illustration of the series titled The Harem Within, Fear of the Difference, where they proceeded to shatter the ethnocentric stereotypes society maintains towards women, The work provided a barometer to record and exhibit the pretenses, the false narratives, the double standards that have crept surreptitiously and insidiously into every aspect of our social fabric. The exhibition's very title, The Harem Within, is shocking enough by itself. Harem is an outside thing referring to a group of women associated with one man. What does the artist Mansoora mean by harem within? How cleverly we are poked into thinking harder just by looking at the title. But once you dive deeper, it becomes clear that what it is something more than the restrictions, the chains holding women back from the outside. The harem within refers to the constraints women place upon themselves by meekly accepting society's verdict, thanks to years of conditioning from within. Through artistic images and provocative words, Hasan and Mernesi systematically deconstruct and expose the inner anxieties, the gnawing fears, compelling women to think harder about themselves and the status quo they have accepted as their location. The harem in the hands of these artists became an effective and a powerful symbol of women's oppression by forcing women to shed the manacles, take off the blinders, and face the fears from outside and from within. Hasan and Mernesi helped women to take one more step out of the harem. I thought of this project when I first read a chilling short poem titled Bruegel's Two Monkeys by the Nobel laureate Wisława Szymborska. If you haven't read her work, by all means go buy her books. I mean, this woman is an amazing poet. Here's an example. The meaning of this Peter Bruegel's Two Monkeys has been debated for centuries now, because this is from the 1500s. But Szymborska, who died a few years ago only, her interpretation is in this short poem. This is what I see when I dream of final exam. Two monkeys chained to the floor sit on the windowsill. The sky behind them flutters, the sea is taking its bath. The exam is history of mankind. I stammer and hedge. One monkey stares and listens with mocking disdain. The other seems to be dreaming away. But when it's clear that I don't know what to say, he prompts me with a gentle clinking of his chain. How beautiful. This is my interpretation of the harem within. What are these chains that are shackling us, that are constantly holding us back? Poetry, prose, paint, music, these are the mediums artists use to describe the human condition with profound insight, as did my beloved friend. Bravo, Mansoora. Orhan Pamuk defines the role of the artist in view from the minaret thus: there was a time when Allah looked down upon the world in all its uniqueness, and believing in the beauty of what he saw, bequeathed his creation to us, his servants. The duty of illustrators and artists, those who, loving art, gaze upon the world, is to remember the magnificence of what Allah beheld and has left to us. Thinking along these lines, I was curiously and pleasantly rewarded to discover the depth of the connection Mansoora and I shared. Art and artists and their role in society are no different than science, scientists, and our role in society. We pretty much ask the same question. जब के तुझ बिन नहीं कोई मौजूद, फिर ये हंगामा है खुदा क्या है, ये परी चेहरा लोग कैसे हैं, गमज़ो इश्वो अदा क्या है, शिकने जुल्फ़े अंबरी क्यों है, निगहे चश्म सुरमा सा क्या है, सब्ज़ो गुल कहाँ से आए हैं, अरे अब्र क्या चीज़ है, हवा क्या है. Art sees things as they are in their present form and then imagines what lies beneath. Science does the same. Both attempt to unravel the happenings around us. Both drill fearlessly through frozen opinions, ossified creeds. Both strive to separate truth from falsehood. Both struggle to articulate what is seen, what is experienced as precisely as possible, and then describe the unseen, the unheard, the unsaid. Both are obsessed with microscopic detail. Both experience the high from the thrill of discovery, the ecstasy of apprehension. The job of both is never to be done, because Ghalib eloquently articulates artists and scientists alike, something Mansoora and I obsessed over independently in our own universes. Araish-e Jamal se farig nahi hanoz is such a gorgeous shade. Araish is embellishment. Jamal is beauty. The embellishment of beauty is never to be done. Araish Jamal se farig nahi hanoz. Why? Peshe nazar hai aina daim naqab mein. Forever inside the seclusion of the veil, the mirror exists continuously. You see, the construction of enchantment, artistic or purely scientific, requires infinite study and labor, one that can never see an end in sight. It is the perpetual enigma of incompletion. The deity creates, remains hidden from the created, sees the reflection in the mirror and wants to improve it, to embellish it, restarting the process of creation over and over again. In other words, layers upon layers upon layers of complexities emerge, which both the artist and the scientist analyze from new perspectives, always in wait for that point of fulfillment which never comes. Neither the artist nor the scientist can expect the calm of consummation, because life is a journey into irresolution. So let's keep reminding ourselves, Araish Jamal se farig nahi hanoz, are peshe nazar hai aina daim naqab mein. In the fall of 1999, I enrolled my 6-year-old daughter Scheherazade and me in a program introduced in Chicago called the Mother-Daughter Series. I was living in Chicago at the time. The idea was to expose little girls as early as possible to living legends who could serve as role models in later life. I figured if Scheherazade was old enough to master the intricacies of Pokemon and Super Mario Brothers, she was old enough to meet some of the women I considered my heroines. And if you paid enough money, you could also have tea with them, with a chance to interact personally. While all the women we met in this series were extraordinary, in some fashion or the other, I wish I could go through the list with you, but the one who left a lasting impression on both of us was Maya Angelou. She gave a stunning talk, weaving together stories, poetry, song, dance, jokes, serious lessons seamlessly and effortlessly. She strung them into a series of spontaneous and extemporaneous outbursts. What an experience. Then at tea time, little Scheherazade, 6-year-old, who had practiced this question with her father beforehand, asked Miss Angelou, Miss Angelou, if there's one piece of advice you could give me, what would it be? Miss Angelou immediately came down on her knees, held Scheherazad's little hands in her own, and said, "Listen, baby, people will forget what you say to them. People even forget what you do to them, but they will never forget how you make them feel." Scheherazade has never forgotten this advice, and I think she's a more sensitive adult as a result. Remember, this was a mother-daughter series, so next it was my turn to pose my question. I had freshly read Miss Angelou's deeply moving memoir of growing up in Missouri, I Know Why a Caged Bird Sings. At the age of 8, Miss Angelou was sexually abused and raped by her mother's boyfriend, a man named Freeman. She told her brother, who went and told the family. Freeman was found guilty and jailed, but released after one day. 4 days after his release, he was found murdered, apparently by Miss Angelou's uncles. Miss Angelou became mute after this experience, refusing to speak for the next 5 years. Not one word passed those lips for 5 years, believing that she was to be blamed for Freeman's death. I thought my voice killed him. I killed that man because I told his name. And then I thought I should never speak again because my voice can kill people. It was during this period of silence that Miss Angelou developed her extraordinary memory, her love for books and literature, especially poetry, and her ability to listen and observe the world around her. Remember, Beethoven wrote the great Ninth Symphony only when he had become completely deaf. And Proust produced the grandest piece, not just French literature, but I am prepared to say, as a serious reader of Proust, in all of literature, his masterpiece, In Search of Lost Time, after locking himself up in a cork-lined room for 11 years. It is as if every external distraction must be blocked before hearing the inner voice. Miss Angelou credited her teacher, Mrs. Bertha Flowers, with helping her speak again, who challenged her by saying, "You say you love poetry, Maya. You cannot love poetry until you speak poetry." And this is how Maya Angelou started to speak again. Coming to the question I asked now, I had just read all of this. Miss Angelou, I asked, if you were able to go back and change one thing, just one single thing in your life, what would it be? Before I give you the answer, let me first address the reason we are all here and why I include this episode in a solemn, tender memorial service. When Mansoora first called to tell me of her diagnosis, I was so shaken that all I could do was rush to Washington. She organized a lovely dinner at home, inviting my sister Atya and my brother-in-law Tariq. At that time, the only noticeable physical change in her was a walking stick by her side. Otherwise, she was our normal, vivacious Mansoora. We had a lovely time. After dinner, Mariam dropped by to say hello. It was the last time I would see my friend. At one point before dinner, she shifted closer to me and said, "These doctors are introducing me to all kinds of teams who are going to teach me how to function when my limbs and my lips stop working. And what feeding tubes should I choose from when I can swallow no more? Yaar, I don't want to go through it all. I'd rather end my life voluntarily when the time nears." Then she asked me about assisted suicide, and we talked gravely about the logistics of which states in the US allow it and what the procedure is. Before we ended the conversation, she asked me if she could count on me for help in this area. As a friend who adored her, as well as a physician walking people through their terminal cancers all my life, how could I say no? She smiled wistfully when I acquiesced, and that is where we left it. As her condition deteriorated, she never broached the subject with me again, although we remained in touch off and on. I periodically thought about why Mansoora did not call me. Because she did not, my respect for her has escalated ad infinitum. You see, that would have been the easy way out. That was not our Mansoora. She chose the harder way. Through the ghastly, grueling, punishing challenges, she stayed the course. The decision highlights what I call the nobility of endurance, and something uniquely human, yet so rare to see. An act of valor that does not go on your CV, an act that does not win you gold medals, yet something that angels dare not attempt. मकाम शौक तेरे कुदसियों के बस का नहीं, अरे उन्हीं का काम है ये जिनके हौसले हैं ज़ियाद. I often think about what went through Mansoora's mind in those utterly silent days and nights. And this brings me back to the answer Miss Maya Angelou gave me when I asked her the question about what is one thing she would change about her life if she could go back. She thought for a bit. And then she said, actually, Azra, it would have to be everything or nothing at all. Wow. What an insightful and profound response. Because you see, by changing one thing, Miss Angelou understood that it would mean changing everything that happened subsequently, the unintended consequences that would follow, especially the effect on the family. What is actual, what is now, makes possible what is to come. Events in our lives are all interconnected. Nothing occurs in isolation. The good and the bad coexist. A sober acceptance of the actual means not just rejecting the easy way out, but excludes regrets. Hemingway once said to Marlene Dietrich, courage is grace under pressure. Our Mansoora showed sublime grace under the unspeakable pressures she faced just by the act of not taking the easy way out. We should all bend our heads, lower our eyes to show our reverence for the sheer anguish that she endured. I will miss her as long as I live. I end with a salute to her in the words of Hali. हम जिस पे मर रहे हैं वो है बात ही कुछ और. हम जिस पे मर रहे हैं वो है बात ही कुछ और. आलम में तुझसे लाख सही तू मगर कहाँ. The one I die over is so unique and so singular. Yes, there are hundreds of thousands like her, but where are you? Mansoora Zindabad.